Shepherding Chaos, the Retail 247 podcast. Embracing change in the world of retail tech.
Hello and welcome to another episode of Shepherding Chaos. I'm Martin Schofield, CEO of Retail 247. Last time we spoke, we were talking tech with John Best, our head of tech here. We had so much content, we thought we'd do another bit. So welcome back, John, or welcome to the next session of Tech Talk, if you like.
Thank you, Martin.
We talked about many things last time round. I think if we start off rolling it back to how we operate with technology, obviously we are a technology company fundamentally. We decided our architecture. We decided we'd have a single code base. We're a SaaS model.
Yeah.
What have the challenges been of that?
I think probably the biggest one is customization. And then closely followed by that is managing releases.
Yeah. And customization, we've written a product. It shouldn't exist, but it does. So because inevitably our clients want slightly different things. We have different interfaces and outputs. So there's a lot of customization, a lot of tenant-specific options.
Yeah. I suppose that's the thing. Because we're building a platform, like a generic platform, like, yes, there's lots of configurability within the platform, but there's going to be some requirements where it's just like we don't want to try to shoehorn genericism into it. Genericism comes with a cost. It comes with architectural complexity and just faff of implementing.
Yeah.
So what we've done for Lifetime Brands is we've really gone, okay, some things, they're going to be too specific. So we wanted to build a platform where we could just have completely custom tenant functionality sitting alongside our generic configurableness.
Yeah.
So I think I was speaking to Deebs recently about that, and we both feel it's just a weight off our shoulders. Excellent. That we've got that option.
I think I agree, and it's really good, and what we've done is really good. I think that it has to be a package first mentality there.
Yeah, absolutely. All of the stuff, the core thing, like in the case of the PIM, the core thing of like bringing in, consolidating product information, making configurable views of that, and then having configurable ways of exporting that information and configurable asset management, all of that stuff, platform. But then when someone wants a specific thing that isn't really that appealing, if it's never going to be used by a second person,
yes, that's a good measure.
I
think we as a retail specialist consultancy as well also have the right to challenge that requirement, and I think we do that well. But yeah, ultimately, if it's never going to be sold anywhere else, and only ever going to be used by one person, then fair enough.
Yeah, and also when you make something configurable, to some degree, you're baking a cage around yourself. In terms of like, when you're building a generic thing, you spend quite a lot of effort building that framework, and then it wants to work in that way. So that it really does free you up. It gives you freedom of action, which is one of the phrases I've been using a lot recently. Right. Freedom of action, when you're just like, oh, we're going to implement this. We'll just make them their own little data structure, own little views. It's super easy. You can get it done quickly, and also much more simply.
Yeah, and it's a constant battle, isn't it? I mean, we've done a couple of exercises, and you've mentioned what we're doing with Lifetime Brands, but also way back when we did the Willovers venture. This is taking systems that have crept over time, and are very functionally rich as a result, do a really good job, but actually have become so spread that they're not really maintainable. Yeah,
absolutely. There's something. It was interesting seeing the similarities between the two systems, where you've got a dedicated developer working for a decade on a thing. That makes it so that the system perfectly wraps the processes, because in both cases they were done by very diligent, good developers who were doing what the business asked for. So that means if someone says, I want a button that does this, they get the button that does that. Yeah. So you'll end up with lots of... But
then that person leaves and the button becomes something that nobody understands. And
So it means that I've been the internal development guy. I've done the systems.
Well, I've hired you several times.
Yeah. So like, I know what it's like where you go, yes, I can make you happy. I can make a thing. I think that means it perfectly wraps the processes, but you end up with appendix, like the human appendix, like bits that suddenly become, they're just
superfluous.
Superfluous, yeah.
And then painful.
Sometimes so I think taking something that's been built with love effectively and dedication definitely, like by a single person over 10 years, like, but then taking it something so that the people can execute this, get the same desired outcome that's really
What phrase do we use? I think it's the essence of the problem. It's attacking the essence of what you're trying to achieve, not necessarily doing it in the same way.
Yeah, absolutely. The journey could be slightly different, but they can solve the same problem sometimes. We have had some very nice feedback on a couple of things. Where it's just like, I was really surprised. I didn't think we could make it smoother whilst keeping it generic. And there's a couple of things. I'm sure there's places where we won't be able to. But yeah, that was.
Yeah, and I think I'd couple that with my other sort of favourite phrase that I haven't used for a while is that people don't know what they want until they see what they can have.
Yeah.
And so it's a journey of what is the art of the possible, isn't it?
Yeah.
It's you could do it this way and it could be better.
Absolutely. And we were both familiar with why do you do it like this? Because we did it that way yesterday.
We always do it that way.
Yeah. It's like, so I think both of us really like the idea of being able to show someone, look, you could do this thing.
And I think we've got that. We work hard at that relationship with all our clients, and we've got that in most cases, probably all cases, where we can challenge, they'll listen, and we'll collaboratively work towards a solution. That's great.
And I mean, quite often, some of our stuff we've had to do quite responsively, shall we say, to customer needs.
Yeah, it's retail.
Yeah, no, absolutely. Yeah. So, but where we because of the close worky thing, that means we can turn something around quickly. Like, say, are we allowed to name drop customers?
Give it a try. We know to cut you out.
Like Reese and the till thing.
Yeah. So again, and because of the sort of, I'll mention that not in detail, but that was something where we put out to a number of sites very quickly. And again, going back to what we talked about in the last episode, that the scalability and that not being a concern, or being less of a concern,
that's better phrasing,
is phenomenal. And we've deployed to 100 sites, say. So there's 100 users hitting us in a single instance, and it's working. It's a breeze.
Yeah.
Go on. Sorry.
Yeah, I was thinking if you want to keep it on the topic of challenges of doing the whole.
Yes, we only got to item 1 on your
list.
That was
item, yeah. Has it? So let's come up with an item 2. Mm-hmm. So this is on the challenge. So just coming back to the problem statement, it's what are the challenges of doing multi-tenanted software as a service? Mm-hmm. Sure. So we've done customization and configurable widgets. What about managing releasing? Yeah. So that's definitely an area. So we've grown from nothing to where we are. Like we literally blank sheet of paper. So over the course of that journey,
it's been fun though. Yeah,
it has been fun. We've had great times. Over the course of that journey, we're constantly striving to improve the platform and also how we do things. And in order to help us with releasing software, like just recently we sorted out feature flags, which I think it's really useful to allow us to limit how we're releasing software, so we can minimize the impact and then gradually switch features on as we're confident. Kind of effectively doing canary releases.
Canary releases,
like a coal mine. So like a canary release, that means you can release something in a limited way, make sure it's safe, and then you're like, oh, the canary didn't die. We're good to go.
Okay.
Obviously, if you were Martin, you could say, John, we don't really want to treat it like that, but it's along those lines where you limit the impact of the release.
And I think, again, it's probably out of my technical league these days, but we did that as well, so those sort of things could be released with minimal impact, thereby releasing the backlog behind it, sort of thing.
Yeah, absolutely. Because we strive to release, I personally want to be able to release ideally at the drop of a hat. Yeah. So you don't want things blocking, but obviously the real world happens and you do end up with things layer caking, and you do end up in a situation that you strive to avoid that, and you strive to make things so that they're small. You want small changes so that you can get them in and out. Now with the feature flags, that's great because that means they don't block because you just don't switch them on. So you can they're all sitting there in the code base and you just switch them on when you want to in test or live.
What other thing? I mean, before we go back to your item 3, what other things are we going to have to do over the next couple of years as we grow to maintain that level of robustness and ability to be flexible? Have we sorted it?
Tempted to see how feature flags evolves. I mean, another thing with feature flags is you can also use it for switching on and off whole capabilities as well as for just like releasing a new version of our capability. What other thing? I'm just sort of...
it's fine. If we're in a good place, I'm fine with that.
Yeah.
Excellent.
Think, like the thing I said in the last episode about making it easier for us to do snapshot environments, I do think that's pretty key. anything to just generally make it so we can release quicker.
And what's our sort of frequency at the moment?
We have deployment meetings twice a week.
Yeah. Whereas, I've read stuff over the years, and you look at the sort of people are releasing hundreds of times a day or tens of times a day.
Yeah,
How on earth do they manage that world?
More automated testing, small teams on focused areas.
Yeah.
So although we're not monolithic, we're smallish lithic, as it were. Yeah. I think you'd need a more full suite of automated tests to kind of move on to that point. I'm pretty happy with where we are. So I think shout out to the team. Like the testing team do a great job of checking stuff.
I think our release quality is very high, actually.
Touch wood. Let's not jinx it, dude.
We get very few times we get feedback of a real problem. I mean, there's some challenges, obviously. There's some interpretation issues, but it's generally speaking remarkably good.
Yeah.
Yeah, cool. Okay. Was there a third item? Back to the SaaS question.
Tenant segregation, I guess.
Mm-hmm.
So, that was, in all fairness, touch wood, once again, that is something that was very focused from the outset, was to clearly ring fence the tenants. So, although it's a single platform.
Actually, that's worth explaining because that is a good concept.
Yeah. Okay. So, for the benefit of the studio audience,
mm-hmm.
Within a multi-tenanted system, you want each tenant to be completely isolated so that there's no conceptual way for them to see each other's data or affect each other's data. So if someone wants to mess around, they're messing around in their own playpen. So we've got a very rigid structure to enforce that, so that tenant separation, that was kind of implemented from day one. I say interestingly, our permissions model has been designed such that in the future we could support cross-tenant permissions.
Yeah.
But we don't, it's just the model supports it, but we haven't implemented anything to do with it because it's not been a customer requirement.
Yeah, I'm not sure that yet.
Sure and I don't want to do
collaboration.
it.
Yeah.
Okay. Ideally, I want to keep that nice, clean, very strict rule on the tenant isolation.
Yeah. And then I guess the other thing is, as the solutions have grown in themselves, but also now two solutions, the complexity is massively increasing too. And onboarding new developers, we have to get more specific and granular, or spend a lot more time covering the piece end to end.
I mean, with the onboarding new developers, that is actually a serious challenge because we historically have been a very small team,
and still are by comparison to bigger players.
And because we're the platform is relatively complicated, I suppose I'd say. And
even if you look at the nuances of the different implementations,
that's complicated.
The configurability is amazing, but equally then each tenant is different. So that naturally is complexity.
So I think that complexity, capturing that complexity is probably another big struggle, or an area that's like you could always do better on. Like we should make it so it's how we document a tenant's implementation, so that somebody can spin up a new environment or answer a question. That's because there's so many pieces of configuration, as you said.
But it's also an increasingly complex world in which you're developing. And I did a demo yesterday of the ticket printing capability we've just done. And I was slightly concerned about the hardware, usually a problem. Went to the customer's offices, plugged the printer into a valid port, and off it went. Immediately found the cloud service, immediately was able to print. It's just, there are things I don't really understand how that works, frankly. And that level of change and cleverness that's coming makes it difficult to keep on top of.
Yeah, I mean, I'll be honest. I was petrified when you said you did a demo, but sure.
I plugged the hardware in to the extent of my involvement.
There we go, techie. I mean, that cloud printing stuff is very clever, very cool.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Although very fiddly still, printing tickets.
Oh yeah, no one likes that.
No. Cool. Anything else on the SaaS front?
No, I think there's some good.
Again, right decision we made.
Yes. Yeah. The single code base, single instance is good because it means that rule means you're never, because it's a single instance, it just drives everything. So you never think, oh, should we customize and do a special fork? You never have this thing where you've got a branch that, they're on this version. We need to upgrade them. We've seen that. We've got these big software. Oh, it's a version upgrade. That means we've got to upgrade all your custom code.
Oh, yeah, quite.
Yeah, so we clearly delineate the custom code in its own pot that's tenant specific and everything else is platform. So yes, I'm very happy with that.
Yeah, the day of, obviously we've all been around, but the days of, an upgrade costing as much as the implementation, you look back and think, bloody hell, that was hard work.
From a billing perspective, that's great.
Yes, it's a great commercial model. Yeah.
Is there any way we could bring some of that back?
Yeah, absolutely. Okay, cool. I think we'll change tack and go back to one of the things we were talking about before, the AI world, ChatGPT. But the logical extension of that is, and you said it particularly, you're using that more than you are Google. So what are Google thinking? Is Google dead?
Yeah, no. Well, Google definitely. I saw an article to say that Google sees it as effectively an existential threat to their business model, because if you're not searching on a search engine, you're not seeing beautiful adverts.
Yeah.
So horrendously, I presume someone's going to try to surface adverts in things at some point. I don't think that's going to play well though, because if I ask a GPT a question,
it says do you buy a t-shirt.
I would not be happy with that. And also, the trouble with large language models is that you could just go to a different one, or you could have a locally running instance potentially. Like once the model's been trained. Yeah.
Pause there for a second, because obviously Google's got Bard and there are other alternatives out there. How did ChatGPT just become the de facto standard? Were they just first to market? How did they make that happen? Because nobody had ever heard of them before. All of a sudden, it's the thing.
Yeah, I think they got a lot of investment. They got a lot of investment, and then they were just right time, right place. Yeah. I think. And it's interesting. Like, you never think how until something disrupts, you don't know what's going to disrupt. Like, one would have presumed social media was a solved problem until TikTok came along and made the ultimate Skolageddon. So then likewise, we always think Google and Bing, sorry, Microsoft. I'm just resent it. We always think that they're going to be forever, but then these... Yahoo, Alta Vista, Ask Jeeves.
Ask Jeeves is what I was thinking of. Things that I can't remember the names of. Yeah.
No offense to Microsoft on the Bing thing there, by the way. So until the disruptor arrives, you don't know it's going to happen.
Cool. So I get, well, they'll be, they'll have thousands of people addressing the problem, no doubt, and they'll have a solution they're going to bring to market that more so than they already have. But yeah, it's a scary world.
They're pushing
when
on board.
Startup can challenge an established entity like Google and make them change their path. It's phenomenal.
And the thing is, I guess here we see the innovation is spurring innovation, because it's such a huge area. It's getting so much investment. Loads of people are jumping on the bandwagon, and it is a bandwagon. It's important to note this is, AI is the new blockchain in terms of shoving. Yeah, we're using AI, and there will be a lot of that.
It's often a marketing thing.
It is obviously, and often we're using AI means we're a thin wrapper over ChatGPT.
Yeah,
I do think all businesses. This doesn't affect us, but all businesses need to consider how they're going to be. Is their business model viable after AI? As it ramps up.
Yeah. Oh, yeah, absolutely. There are industries out there. There are translation industries. There are things that AI is not quite good enough for. For example, technical translation. Yeah. But it's heading pretty close. It'll get there.
And I think that it's going to be there'll be a transitional period where it's co-working with the AI. But 10 years from now, who knows? 5 years from now.
5 minutes. Yeah, absolutely. Well, let's talk about that. What does the next generation of coding look like? If you were starting out today as a junior developer, or a junior analyst programmer, that's the debate we had earlier. What would you be thinking about the future?
What would I be thinking about the future? That's a really good question. I think the most important thing for a developer to do is to develop. If you aren't making stuff, you're not learning. So, and I always think it's great when you speaking to developers and they're like, "Yeah, I'm doing this thing. I'm making this thing." It's as I said earlier on, development is not, coding is not boring. Like, you could make anything.
Yeah.
Like, so.
Oh yeah, things like apps. That 10 years that didn't exist, but now you can release an app and you can have it available globally, and it's just amazing.
So I think it's having that. I think the best developers are ones who want to get in and solve a problem. It's not. You want to take something apart. You want to make a thing because you want to make a thing.
Yeah.
So I think those people should just follow wherever their nose leads them, and they're probably in a better place to find that than me. because they're closer to the ground on new things, perhaps. And they know what their interests are. Like, if they want to make a game, make a game. Like, I personally love game programming. I haven't done it for quite a few years, but I spent many years of my free time making games just for my own amusement.
How close are we to saying to ChatGPT then, make me a game that does this?
Very, pretty close. I think people have done a lot of stuff along those lines, and that's where I think the co-working editing thing, you switch, rather than having to cut all the code yourself, you switch to editing it. I think it will be difficult. There's always been the threat of no code, like, or low code, or do we need developers? But it's always an 80-20% problem with that kind of thing, because if you've got a system for making applications, it can do most of it really simply, but then the complicated bit, you end up having to do something that looks very much like coding. So I think ChatGPT will hopefully, or just generally AIs will make it easier to bootstrap an application. But
you still need the idea in the first place.
You still need the idea, and also it's going to need fiddling with. It's going to need, without fiddling with, once again, could be done with an AI. I've seen multiple startups who are taking Copilot to the next level, like where you have, effectively, you can have teams of AIs working on a thing where you give it an objective to effectively one AI, and then it will come up with a plan and then use other ones to execute that plan. No, it makes sense. It's deconstructing it exactly as I would.
Yeah.
When I'm doing anything, my poor colleagues are familiar with me and baby steps. Like I think that's one thing that, I don't know if I'm damaged by being a programmer, but I'm fairly obsessed with deconstructing things. It seems fair. But I'm like anything, like where I need to solve a problem, it's like smaller step to the point of like make a page, like there, okay, next. Because that's just inevitable. If you keep on executing the micro steps, you'll get there. So, but with the ChatGPT or with the AI thing, you can have an AI come up with a plan, and then it goes, okay, I need to create a Python application, and then I'll tell another AI to do that. And this is kind of like the decentralized thing we were talking about before.
Yeah.
It doesn't have to solve that problem. It tells something else to solve that problem.
I hadn't really thought about that. That's scary.
And then it tells another one to test that.
Yeah.
And then it tells another one to, by deconstructing the problem, you make it solvable.
Yeah.
It's kind of like if someone said to me, "Hey John, make a PIM," I'd be like, "Well, that's pretty big." But we basically have deconstructed the problem over time, and effectively, you could do the same thing with large language models.
But in 10 minutes rather than 10 years.
Yeah, but yeah, I don't know. Over the next few years, it could be quite spicy. So we could see a higher rate of change. I worry about when it creates a thing, somebody needs to look at that thing to validate it. Does it do the right thing? Does it always do the right thing?
Yeah.
In much the same way that the large language models are impenetrable black boxes. If you don't look at the code that it's generated, you don't know that it's not doing something stupid.
If you look at parallels in the world and the deep fakes we mentioned at some point, and the fact that people are less becoming less bothered that it is the real thing, if that makes sense, or the right thing. It's a slippery slope. Yeah,
I mean, with the thing is with deepfake, with consuming media on, say, TikTok or whatever, whether you're consuming something that's real or fake, whether it's been generated by a human or a machine, that's the thing. But when you're creating software to solve a problem, whether or not it solves that problem correctly is a fact.
Yeah. Okay.
I mean, you could say there's some grey area. Does it do it well? But so the output of the large language model, where it builds the application, is like, does it solve the problem? Does it, and how does it?
You still need somebody pulling the strings.
Yeah.
So, do you, separate-ish question: do you consider yourself a technologist or a retail technologist?
Well, I've got a tattoo saying retail technologist. Technologist, I guess. Yeah. Like, I think the retail background is useful when we're speaking to customers. I like it when I'm brought along as the tame techie kind of thing. And I think that having the retail background does help in that. I remember my first interview with you. I remember.
True.
Yeah. I remember you were summoned and you said something like something about retail.
Yeah.
Like, and at the time, and for quite a few years after, I've always felt like it's not that important. And it isn't in the anyone can learn a domain. But having that knowledge of of the stuff means when you're talking to people, particularly when you're doing the analyst programmer piece, when you're doing that thing where you're interacting with someone.
Well, yeah, I don't remember the first interview, but I remember taking you to the board at Harvard X when we'd done that piece around replenishment and whether to hold stock back before we sent it out to stores.
Yeah.
And you did that excellent piece of work, and we illustrated it really well. We convinced a lot of the business, and then taking a bit of a risk back in the day, I put you in front of the chief exec, and you did really well. But you had to understand context. We addressed a business problem at that point, and I think that's what makes a great programmer.
That was probably the highlight of my career. It was the best fun. It was like, that was good.
One of my riskier moves, but it was.
Yeah. It was. I like the way the PowerPoint, when I presented it to Al, it was like full of cats and stupid pictures. And gradually, as it went up the chain, there's like the pictures got removed.
Yeah, some things don't change.
Yeah.
Good. Okay. That's brilliant, John. Thank you again. And yeah, we've meandered through technology and how we've applied technology to our business, and it's been great. Thank you.
Thank you, Martin.